NRA TV with Bill Whittle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Hot Mike. I'm Bill Whittle. Hot Mike's having a dentist appointment right now. We hope to have him in by the second half of the show. But until then, I will be hosting this program for you. And, another day, another few idiots to knock down, right? The great thing about being in this line of work, actually, is that you're never going to run out of product. There's always going to be somebody saying something stupid, treasonous, infantile, disgusting, all the rest. And most of it comes from that beautiful city you see right behind me here, which is genuinely just over the hill. We're recording live from Los Angeles today. And so welcome to the show. Why don't we just get started with our latest adventure in pop culture intersection with actual treasonous activities and the glorification of the people who really, really should be in jail for being very, very bad folks. You may or may not have heard about this leaker, this security leak. I'm not smart enough to make these things up. Her name is Reality Winner. Reality Winner is her name. I've got some serious questions about both of those names, to be honest with you, as far as this young lady goes. But if you haven't heard of Reality Winner is a young woman who was employed by a private security firm. She had a security clearance rather. And so she decided to leak all kinds of stories about Donald Trump because she's a big Bernie Sanders supporter. And, it's one thing to be a Bernie supporter. I mean, the guy's an out and out, avowed, proud socialist. I'm not entirely sure that people who are really, really, really into bringing socialism into this country should have a security clearance in the first place, but it gets a little more interesting than that. We found out after she was arrested that Reality Winner had a notebook talking about how much she sympathized with ISIS. Now, you may wonder why somebody would take those kind of chances, risking, arrest by releasing top secret national security documents to the press in order to further her own personal political agenda. But in an interview with her mom, I think it was with her mom, she basically gave her her motivation, and that was she didn't think she was going to get punished for it because, this is a direct quote, she thinks she's too pretty, too white, and too cute to go to jail. Well, justice is blind, apparently. She's being held without bail. She's not too pretty, too cute, too white to go to jail. If she has such a serious problem with Donald Trump and his administration, I am fondly of the hope that she will get to spare herself from all of it and be released in 2024, somewhere around there, whenever Donald Trump gets out of office. So look, what do we have here? We've got basically a stupid teen who never should have gotten a security clearance in the first place. She's just a dumb young girl. And one of the ways you can tell she's a dumb young girl is because she talks about her sympathies with ISIS. Now, as it turns out, and this one is not so funny, I'm afraid, and there's nothing funny about this story either, for that matter. But there were several stories, and one of which I thought was very, very sad, was several months ago. These two young German women, these two young, pretty white women, decided that they wanted to be Islamic brides and go to the Middle East and fight for ISIS. No fooling. They thought it would be romantic and adventurous, and so many of the men in their countries were just not men at all. They're just kind of, males. And so these two young, pretty German girls decided to go and join ISIS, and they were basically immediately gang raped and held as sex slaves, and when they tried to escape, they were killed. I don't want that to happen to Reality Winner, but I'd like her to read about it. Now, here's where the cheese gets binding, as they used to say. It's one thing to be a stupid teen with no experience in the world and do stupid things like this, just kind of on the belief that you're not going to get caught for it. But you can count on Hollywood being there to back the most god-awful situations in America. If there's something that's bad for the country, you pretty much be assured that Hollywood has a lot of people who are 100% behind it. So that brings us to Rosie O'Donnell, who you may remember from a show that failed and who was actually hired as Betty Rubble in the, I think it's the first time I saw her. She was hired as Betty Rubble in one of the Flintstone movies. She looked like she ate Betty Rubble. But in any event, Rosie O'Donnell is not just your average left-winger. Rosie is a genuine, over-the-top nutcase. And Rosie O'Donnell is praising Reality Winner, and she's saying that Reality Winner is very brave. As a matter of fact, Rosie O'Donnell made a contribution to Reality Winner's GoFundMe page. You'll be pleased to know that if you are a traitor and a liar and a security risk and all the other things, an ISIS supporter, you'll be pleased to know that in America today, that doesn't mean you're not going to make a ton of money, because we can start a GoFundMe page. There you see, citizens from around the country and around the world have already pledged $37,153 just as we begin to tape this, in order to provide for her well-being. By the way, just below that on her description, the family says, this is a very tough time for Reality Winner, and we need some help to help her get through these tough times and provide some support and so on and so forth. She's going to have some tough times in prison. By the way, I just flew into my head as an idea. Is there any chance, I wonder, if we could start our own GoFundMe page, and what we would do is we would collect money from the American people so that we could send people to prison to talk to Reality Winner and give her a fundamental basic outline of what Islam is and what ISIS is. We give her a little historical background of ISIS. We could show her some pictures of people being beheaded. We could talk a little bit about the United States of America and the history and the people who are at risk. We could introduce her to some special forces guys who may be going to be killed because of her releasing information, because she's such a petulant child that she just decided to do this. I think if we started a GoFundMe page to keep Reality Winner in jail and make sure she learned a little bit about life while she was in there, I think we could do brisk business. However, Rosie O'Donnell is the kind of person who supports all these things, and so why? Why would she do that? Rosie does things like that because Rosie, grown woman, really grown woman, is exactly as stupid as this, what is she, 19, 20, 20-year-old, 22-year-old girl? She's just that dumb. She believes all these things, believes Donald Trump is Hitler, and believes that standing up and releasing national secrets and being in favor of ISIS is just grand. So it's one thing to be a young, stupid teen, and it's another thing to be a much older, much stupider, much more well-known celebrity idiot who, once again, is on the wrong side of history, wrong side of morality, wrong side of everything. And you think they get tired of it after a while, but apparently no. This is a fun that just keeps renewing itself. So on to our next story. As you probably heard, Donald Trump was going to visit the UK, but he was prevented from visiting the United Kingdom because of massive protests against his presence. And there's only one problem with that news story. There's one detail actually not quite correct with that, and the detail is it's not true. It's just plain not true. So let's bring in our guest for today. He's a remarkable gentleman, Dr. David Grantham of the National Center for Policy Analysis. David, good to see you. Thanks for being on the show. I know this must come as a deep, deep shock to you, but it looks like the mainstream media got a story wrong.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, first of all. Yes, it's becoming a pattern, it seems like, after the recent testimony of James Comey, where we learned that CNN and New York Times both published articles that were inherently incorrect, if not, majority of the narrative was incorrect. And I think, and this is just my speculation, but I think what the U.S., what American readers, consumers are learning is that the media is not as sophisticated as once thought, in that they were supposedly doing significant research into these stories and putting together a 3 and 4 peer-reviewed, backstopped, interviewed, et cetera, and it turns out when it comes down to ideology, or when it comes down to what now is becoming the Donald Trump derangement syndrome, there's no level to the manner in which the media and others will go to apparently either falsify or just knowingly publish something that has been verified.
David, you said these mainstream news media people aren't as sophisticated as once thought. I suspect they've always been this stupid, and I suspect they've always been this biased. But what's new is the feedback loop of the internet, right? This is new. They haven't had to deal with this before. The most remarkable thing I ever saw, David, maybe you can give me some insight into this, because it is a question of we now have watchdogs who are watching the people who are supposed to be the watchdogs. But back in the 2004 election, when George Bush was accused of being AWOL from the Texas Air National Guard, CBS News ran with that story And they made the mistake of putting up the document. There was a memo from the Texas Air National Guard, presumably written in 1968 or something, saying that George Bush was essentially away without official leave. And they posted the letter online. Well, as it turns out, it was whatever the squadron number was, let's just say 1168th. And instead of a TH, which is what you would type on a typewriter, it was the uppercase TH, the way that a computer would do it with a typesetting thing. So somebody noticed that. Somebody else wrote out the letter in Microsoft Word, printed it, did a one-to-one overlap. Somebody on the CBS team said, well, it could have been done by the IBM Selectric. And the guy stands up and says, couldn't have been done by the IBM Selectric. How do you know? Well, I'm the engineer of the IBM Selectric. I designed the IBM Selectric. The reason I bring all this up, David, is because the internet now is a series of people who have expert opinions about things, and the press simply cannot make a statement anymore, have it be wrong, and sweep it under the table if you get a correction on page 17.
Yeah, when I say that they don't, I guess the issue with sophistication is at least that they're being exposed for not having it, and I think to your point, it could have been going on for a long time. It's just now being affirmed by outside, quote unquote, amateur media and the watchers who are watching them to ensure that they're producing quality research. And I think the Watergate scandal, for example, two of the leading newspaper writers who followed that have come out and said that the slant against Trump is just becoming obnoxious, and they said they really need to reel it back in. And I think that's some of the old school thinking is saying that even though you may dislike him, you need to report the news and report facts. No one's going to your trust will erode quickly, especially this day and age, but it can be verified within minutes. I think your example of that was probably one of the first major issues where they said, this was written on a typewriter, and someone quickly looked at it and said, no, this was Microsoft Word. And I think that was really a breaking point in some ways.
It absolutely was. That's why I brought it up. And the thing that's so remarkable about that, Dan Rather and CBS News said, well, who's coordinating this? It must be the White House is coordinating this. Nobody's coordinating it. A guy on Free Republic, a guy named Buckhead, I want to say, basically noticed it, and he made a post about it. And then somebody else got a hold of it, and they did the Selectric thing. And then they did it all just happened. It assembled itself. It's kind of a weird sort of a group intelligence. David, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the motivation behind this kind of fake news and the whole idea of fake news and it being called out and so on. So if you can stick with us for a few moments, we'll be back. This is Bill Whittle's Hot Mic on NRA TV.